Women's Wellness Tribe, the podcast. Get comfortable, or get your walking shoes on, and let's get going. Good morning, beautiful, wealthy women. What a beautiful day. And I'm just going to start the podcast right here. A little bit of positivity. No matter what is going on today, or where you have to go, or when you're listening to this, if you're just driving home from work or going for a walk, just take a moment to have a look at the world around you, where you are now, and find something that's beautiful. If you can't, look in the mirror, because there's beauty in everything. So I'm just sat in my office looking out the window. I can see the house opposite the street, my car, but I can see the sun in the sky, and a man, he's just gone past on his scooter, the car wash man, and they always make me smile because they're always so happy, and just finding the beauty in small things. So podcast has begun already, guys, finding that beauty. And also, I'm going to just say this out loud, I'm actually cold today. I know that hasn't got anything to do with anything, but I'm just sat here in the office as well, and I'm like, oh, I have no idea the temperature. But Dubai has ruined me. As a British girl, growing up, with the British weather, being able to walk around in my 20s into town, I actually have a memory of walking home from town with no shoes on, in the snow, little skirt, little top, and now here I am, 22 degrees, sitting indoors, cold. Anyway, I digress. Today's podcast is something that I mention all of the time, and it just occurred to me the other day, probably the reason I'm going to talk about it, that I'd never actually done a standalone podcast, and I'm going to be talking about intuition. So I'm guessing it was my intuition the other day that sort of sparked and was like, right, this is your next podcast. And just linking to that, I'm going to go through what it actually means, how to tap in, but my podcast is one thing that I always use my intuition with, and I just allow the subjects to come to me. I just ask, like, what am I going to do this week? And I wait until it comes, and my recording day is normally Tuesday, but today is Saturday because I'm busy on Tuesday. And this morning, as I was driving home from yoga, I was like, right, I'll record today. And I was thinking, what can I talk about? What's happened this week? What's come up for me? And just intuition. And intuition is one of the things that I think as women, we really, really, really should be tapping into, because it is a gift. Every woman has intuition. Every person, to be honest, has an intuition, but I'm talking to wonderful women here. We all have it. And I truly believe that because we live in such a patriarchal run society, we're not taught how to tap into it. Imagine as a child or as a young girl, if you were told, like, what does your intuition tell you? Do you think you would have made some different decisions? Because I definitely know I would, and I'll probably share some of those as I'm chatting today. So intuition is one of, I think, the most prominent gifts of spirituality, being in tune. And it's an ability to connect to yourself. Like I said, it is something that we all have access to, but this also does require you to be able to tap into your internal state. So this makes it no surprise that, we women have a deeper connection to this, because we're better at tapping into our internal state. So if there is a man listening, this does include you as well, but I am going to mention women. I don't think any men listen to this podcast anyway. So femininity in general is all about relating to the internal state. It explains why women are given credit for being masters of the spiritual realm. So women are able to connect more deeply than just the surface level, than just what's going on around them, the material world. And you'll know this, just think back to small things that happen, or you might get a bad feeling about something. Or on the flip, when there is a situation occurring, no matter what that is, as women, we are able to sort of tap into another side of it. And, mother's intuition, you may know that something's going on with your children. Now, how strong are you if there is something going on with your children? Sometimes you may sense it before you even hear of it. And this is what I'm talking about, this ability, this innate ability we've got to just tap in. To be able to tap in though, and if you are struggling, it may be that there needs to be a bit of healing. We need to heal the communication between our bodies, our souls, and our minds. And I know I've spoken a lot about that connection, but being able to listen to what our body says, to be able to listen to what our soul is trying to tell us, and then being able to separate our mind from our ego. Once we're intuitive, once we've tapped into this, it really can elevate us to new heights. Honestly, the more I tap into my intuition, it's still a journey for me. I am highly intuitive, but I pushed it in a box for a long time. But the more I tapped in, the more I was able to tap into my feminine. I, started to receive communication from higher levels of consciousness. And, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm having conversations with a person that's not there, or a ghost or a spirit. That's what a lot of people think. But it's more in my head. And when I ask a question, I know the difference between my intuition and it's just my ego talking. And a lot of people ask me that. When it's your intuition, it feels good. So have a little test now. You can just do it as something simple like, what do I have for my lunch? What do I have for my dinner? What am I having for my tea? The first thing that comes into your head, if you're a bit like, ugh, that's not your intuition. If it's like an absolute yes, then it's your intuition. And I know picking food is not, the most scientific thing, but just something simple. It could be, shall I go out tonight? And if your ego says yes, and then there's just something you're like, oh, I can't be bothered. Your ego is being a people pleaser. And your intuition is probably screaming, no, you need an early night, listen to your body. So it's just very, very tiny. If it's your intuition, you're comfortable with it. And I like to think of my intuition as being this, like a sat nav. Do we still call them sat navs, or is it just a GPS? Anyway, a sat nav. It's like the friend on your shoulder, this little pilot that helps you make decisions. It gives you, like I've just said, that level of internal security. And you can tap in for love life, finances. Should I be worrying about this? Which way am I heading? And once you've tapped in, you're knowing that you're tapping into that divine guidance. Our intuition is an inner knowing that separates conscious thought. So like I've just said with just the simple, what shall I eat? It's instinctive and it comes from within. And the way that we can access it, is simply by being. So just being with yourself. And that doesn't mean just sitting down and waiting. You must learn how to connect. So with this internal sat-nav that we've got, our intuition does know what's best for us. It's programmed with wisdom that our conscious mind has not yet come across. And I know that might sound a little bit woo-woo, but it knows. Our conscious mind hasn't even thought of it yet. So thinking of your intuition as a separate part of you, that's rather than this active thinking part at the front, this is how I visualize. So at the front is my active thinking part, my mind. It's there all the time, and where am I going, what am I doing, who am I speaking to today? And my subconscious, my intuition, sits around my third eye, and I sometimes also place it at the back of my head. So our mind, so for me, the front, the top of the forehead, is where I process my logic, like the mental chatter, the everyday things, the traffic, the driving, the stuff that we have to do every day, the numbers, the words, the listening to conversations, the physical reality of being a human. So on the other hand, intuition is the subconscious, like I've just said, at the back of your head for me and within the third eye. And it's related to your spiritual body. Amazingly, It gives us the ability to understand something instinctively without needing to logically rationalize it. So just think about that. It goes back to this instinct. And for the mums listening, you will know this mothering instinct. A highly intuitive woman will simply know what path to take without thinking about it. So this is where I challenge you to start tapping in, because you won't regret it. Whenever you listen to your subconscious messaging, you're not going to have that second doubt. You'll always feel grateful. You'll always feel calm. You won't be able to explain, but you'll know it's the right decision. And as women, we are very lucky to be so in tune with our intuition. And just take a moment now just to say thank you so much for my intuition. Start tapping into it now. Embrace the gift, because it adds another layer to this human experience. It's here to make our life better. So we don't want to waste it. And I have a few funny stories that I'll share as we go through. One, as I was talking about the feelings, I've shared this story, I'll share it now, on my anxiety podcast when I was on a plane with my friend. And there was something, it was my anxiety was telling me to get off that plane. But it was also, there was something with my intuition, and it was so strong that I had to get off the plane. And who knows, yes, I had anxiety at the time, but I do feel that because I was really learning how to tap in, I truly believe that I got off that plane, and because I made such a fuss at the beginning of the flight that, I don't know, I'm not saying that I stopped, something major happening, but who knows? I will never know, you will never know, they will never know. It's just a feeling that I've got, and that's my intuition. And more recently, and I shared about this on a podcast not long ago, where I completely ignored my intuition and something completely blew up in my face. So my intuition was telling me don't do something, but I did it anyway because my human side, my ego, was just thinking about money, some easy, fast cash, which never ended up coming because it wasn't meant to be. So again, I ignored my intuition, and I remember having a conversation with my friend at the time, and I was like, oh my God, I'm kicking myself because I knew I shouldn't have gone, and I completely ignored it. And then I paid the price. So that's just two little examples, and I will share some more and how I'm tuning in and strengthening my own intuitive muscle as well. So how to access intuition. It differs for everyone. So I'm just going to go through sort of how I do, general things that you can do, but you will find your own way. So because our intuition is our inner voice, it is there constantly telling us things that can help us to get through the day, basically. So this inner voice can alert you of potential danger. It can advise you to heal certain areas that you need to work on. It's that nudge that you get that you feel puts you in the right direction. So when you make a decision and you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited, and it feels amazing. It feels so good inside. That's when you've listened to your intuition. So if you do have a decision and you're like, oh, I'm not sure, I don't know, and you're toying with something, and then you decide, you make your decision either yes or no, it's like, oh, this feels so good and I'm so excited. And I've had a few of those as well this week, actually. So the first step is to declare that you trust your intuition. So you make the decision that right now, as you're listening to this podcast, that you trust yourself with all the wisdom that lies within you. The information is there, but you'll not be able to access it if you don't believe it. So if you're listening to me talking now and you're a bit like, I don't know, repeat after me. I trust myself. I trust my intuition. I trust my wisdom that lies within me. I am powerful. Just repeat that. And then that's your first step. I believe. So intuition, yes, it's natural. And, a lot of people say to me, especially men, if it's so natural, why can't we all do it? Or why do we have so much trouble connecting to it? And this goes back to what I said at the start, this detachment from it. This, within Western society, it's not everyone across the world. It's mostly Western society that has come away from nature, and it's more, we're taught if we can't see it, then it's not true. And this has a problem because connecting with intuition, obviously we can't see it. It's not anything that we can hold on to or grasp. So in a world that's so disconnected from nature, of course we're going to struggle. We're not told to go sit outside and talk to the plants. And again, I'm not talking about these people I've seen on the news lately and tying yourself to a tree and super gluing your hand to tarmac. It's just getting outside and just appreciating, the same as you did at the start of the podcast. Tapping into nature. And I know I say this a lot as well, we are nature. Once I've finished recording this podcast, today I'm having a social media free day. I'm going to sit in the garden, I'm going to journal, I'm going to watch the birds, look at the parrots, chasing the dogs, just really connecting. And it's because of the way that the modern world pushes us more into our head than our body. It's kind of had that switch, because femininity is about connecting with the body. So as we navigate ourselves through this physical world, we are dependent on the use of the mind. Does that make sense? So rather than how does it feel, it's what do you think? I'm just using the word think now, but think about when you're in a meeting at work. Imagine if you were told, how does that feel for everyone? And you were given a couple of minutes or a minute or so just to know how does that feel, rather than, if the question's not even asked for a start, or it's always what does everyone think about that? And then we tap into the ego because we're at work. So we don't get much practice listening to our own inner voice because the outer world drowns it out. One of the main things that makes our intuition so hard to hear is the value we place on other people's voices. We spend so much time worrying about what other people might think of us. What are they going to think if I say that? What are they going to think if I do this? Then we can't listen to our own voice. But no one teaches us this. No one teaches us to trust our inner voice, and no one teaches us how to nurture it. Instead, people are taught to ignore their intuition. And sometimes that's in an obvious way, sometimes in a not so obvious way. So, for example, this could include, if you've ever felt ashamed for trying to rely on your intuition when making decisions. You may have said to someone, I just have a feeling, or something's not quite right. But because you can't rationalize it in a cohesive way, there's no logical explanation, the other people don't take you seriously. So you might have had a time when you're like, I just don't know, I just don't want to. Why don't you want to? Why do you feel that way? Or you might meet a person and just not like them, and everyone's like, oh, you're wrong, they're fine, and people are trying to tell you, how you're meant to feel about somebody. But if your intuition is screaming to you, do not trust them, there's something about them, then everyone else around you then sort of tells you that you're wrong. And I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you listening to this, can think of a time you've met someone that everybody loves, and there's just something about them that you can't put your finger on. But if you said it out loud, everyone would, not shush you, but they wouldn't take on board what you're saying. So this means that we're placing our trust not in ourselves, but in what other people say and how other people back us up. So this means we then struggle to trust our own voices and whether our own decisions are valid, because we're waiting for other people's approval of them. So we replace our voice with their voices, and then it becomes an endless habit. It becomes normal. And it could be, and this is where I'm really trying to work on for myself, is it can come across as indecisiveness. So, shall I do this? Shall I do that? Shall I buy this? No, yes, no, yes, no, yes. And if you're that person as well, because I am, but I'm learning to trust my intuition more and going with the first thing that comes into my head rather than waiting all day for my boyfriend to get home. And, he most of the time when I ask him, oh, what shall I do about this? He's just like, don't know, don't bother me. And I'm just like, oh my God, there's no need for me to wait for that approval for him. Well, then I'll find myself, if he thinks the opposite, because my intuition is telling me the opposite to what he thinks, I'll then start to sort of try and argue to change his mind, if that makes sense. So I think this, and if he's like, oh, no, and I'm like, but, and we all love a but as women, instead of just going with my thought, because that's my intuition. And what this does as well, and for me, it can severely damage self-confidence and the trust we have in ourselves. And like I've said, this is something that I am personally working on. I may come across as very self-confident. I have a podcast. Surely you've got to be confident to have a podcast. But when it comes to other things, I'm really not. And I'm quite introvert. And I worry that, if I speak out, if I say this, it's safe. This is my podcast. I'm recording in a room on my own, plus 2 hours. There's no one here to sort of go against. But would I do this I would do this in a room full of people, actually. My intuition says yes. Argue with myself just like on the podcast. But then it's no surprise that, we don't give intuition the credit it deserves because we put it second. So there's nothing wrong with making decisions based on logic. So some of you might be listening thinking, well, I can't just rely on my intuition with X, Y, and Z. It's necessary for a lot of situations, We can't just turn up to imagine you're buying a house or, I don't know, something large, or you're in the bank and you just kind of take a moment, close down your eyes, tap into your intuition. Or for me, if you're in a shop and you're like, do I get it? Don't I? Do I? Don't I? And even with small things like that, purchasing things, if you're like, I don't know, just buying something, our intuition can help us. So closing your eyes in the shop, like, do I get this? And the shopkeeper, the shop store person's there just like, what is this person doing? So after pledging to trust your intuition, what's next? It's time to understand how we receive messages from the divine, from source, from your higher self. You might call it something else. I mostly tap into my higher self or my most magical self. Sometimes I speak to the universe. Sometimes I speak to my guides. All of these can just be a label for your intuition. Or sometimes I'm like, oh, what do I do? And I don't ask anyone. I just put it out there. So your intuition doesn't communicate with you in the same technical manner as the mind either. So it'll never come to you as, a set of logical instructions handed to you on a plate. It doesn't work like that. Though I keep calling our intuition, our inner voice, it speaks non-verbally. So guidance comes via sensation. So this is where it comes back to what I was saying about how does it feel. So it's not the sensation itself that is the divine source, but the sensation is one way it can get the message to you. So think of it like someone sending a message to you. The message couldn't be delivered as a letter, text message, word, or mouth. It's a feeling. And let me give you an example. When you walk into a room, and if your tummy goes over for no reason, that is your intuition maybe saying, oh, what's going on here? Or you're talking to someone and you get that feeling. So it can be multiple things. It's the feeling of if you go yes and you're like, woo, or you go yes and you're like, oh my God, and it's that horrible feeling. So it has multiple modes of communication. So it can be thoughts, feelings, dreams, even physical issues. So you have to listen and observe the sensations when they come. So another way might be that you've made a decision about something and you suddenly keep having backache or shoulder ache because you're carrying that unwanted decision around with you. So thinking about when you make a decision, just take a moment and tap in and like, does this feel right in my body? So that's your interpretation of the sensations. And this requires being a very good listener to your body. You must be present, you must be patient, and let the message flow to you. Over time, it gets easier and it'll be more natural. But practice this the next time you're finding that you're struggling to make a decision or you want to find a decision. Close down your eyes, picture the scenario, and ask the question, what do I do? And then sometimes what I do within my I'll have a visualization, is I'll see what feels good. I'll look at different scenarios and see which scenario feels the best. Sometimes it doesn't come straight away. Sometimes I'll be driving or walking and then it comes. So it doesn't happen straight away, which is where our patience comes in. And what makes our intuition so dependable is because it passes on data from different parts of us. So this includes a little bit of science, our electromagnetic field. It includes our heart. It's communicating all the information that our conscious mind is not processing. And this is why we get certain subconscious feelings when we're in those weird and wonderful situations. Our body processes the information it's receiving in the present moment. So this is part of the nature of being feminine. She is very present. Knowing this matters because you may have planned to do or say things in certain scenarios that you're in, but you need to tune in and listen. So your inner voice might then have a different plan. So if you're going somewhere and you're planning on seeing somebody and you're like, right, I am going to say this, but your body is telling you something different. So you might have decided on what you're going to say, but you still feel like crap. You're still really nervous. So this is your subconscious, this is your intuition, this is your higher self blocking messages out. And it's going to try and drown you out with feeling. Does that make sense? I hope that does, because that's... So if you've got one decision made and it feels like SHIT, that is your source, that is your intuition telling you you've made the wrong decision. You need to listen to us. So I'm going to give you butterflies and I'm going to make you feel weird or sick. So it can also manifest, so rather than a really physical, as a feeling of just knowing. And I know that you've all had this feeling. So this is the confirmation that you have made sense of your inner voice. You should always try and listen to it, trust it. This helps to assure you that no matter what the situation you are in, you'll always be okay because you have your intuition there to guide you. So honor it, listen to yourself. So just take a moment. There might be something going on right now that when you think about it, that your body is telling you something different. Take a moment, pause, ask your intuition, what are you trying to tell me? And see what plays out, see how you feel. So that's more about receiving the messages. And we can just receive, so through the sensation and through the doubt. If it doesn't feel like a hell yes, it's a hell no. That's what our intuition is telling us. It's then also we need to tune in by having a conversation. So bear in mind that you might not always be able to interpret the sensations. It might not make sense. You might think, oh my God, I don't know, and feel really torn. And that's because we have this ego. There is one way that I use to speed up the process. So I live by, if you don't understand, then ask. And sometimes my ego is like, don't ask. But I know that I need to. So I need to treat my inner voice like this. I need to ask her. And some questions that I use: what are you trying to let me know? I'm here to listen. Can you show me the way? I trust you. What should I do? What are you? Why are you here? What are you trying to tell me? What is the truth I am closing my eyes to? I know the answer is already here. What am I missing? So I'll ask those questions, or one of them. The one that I go to the most is, what are you trying to let me know? What are you trying to show me? Because if I don't feel right about something, then, I need to find the answer. And the situation back at the start of last year, if I'd have just listened and didn't just ignore and think about the money, if I'd have just, I honestly felt sick driving to this place, and I knew I shouldn't be going. I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? You don't want to be going here. It's a waste of time. It's not what you want. But my ego was like, oh, but it's going to be easy money for your trip to America. If I had just listened to what you're going to tell me, then they would have told me. So my higher self, my intuition would have told me that it's not worth going. You're going against what you actually want. It's going to take up a lot of your time. It's not going to be a nice environment. You don't need to do this. This is below your highest self. But I wasn't listening. So listening to the answers. If I'd have listened to those answers, then it would have, my doubt, the tummy butterflies would have gone. And I may have just had, and I think I did at the time, I knew something bad was going to happen, and I had that feeling of premonition. Many times, because of the present nature of how we live and our feminine energy, we do feel the answers instantly, but then we put them off because we're not sure. You need to tap into that first thing that comes up. So I know I've said that, but just tapping in. Once you've tapped into that first thought, the next step is to take action. There's no point in having the information that's been gifted to us if we don't decide to use it. So that is the whole point of intuition, is to guide you. So after you receive the information, after we're told what we need to do it. We need to take those steps. Because if we ignore it, then we're listening to our ego and our human mind. It will take time to trust, and you might have that ego going, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? There's no evidence this is going to work, but just trust. It might be that you're procrastinating on something that you know you need to do. Intuitive hits can encourage you to do the things that you know that you should have started. It might be that your intuition tells you to go to the gym, write a book, start the business, start the new hobby. Whatever it is, the inner voice wants the best for us. And again, that comes down to trust. If you ignore it, it will manifest in other ways, and that's when we may feel sick, physically and mentally. We'll have a feeling of dissatisfaction, and it can manifest as depression or frustration. So if you have days when you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? I feel so uncomfortable with myself. This discomfort is your intuition whispering in your ear, listen to me. But the more you ignore it, the more it'll shout. And if you still don't listen, then your gut instinct might communicate with you instead. And this is when your gut is off. I know so many women, and men actually, with IBS, gut problems, and this is a manifestation of ignoring your intuition and not listening. And it does. Think about when you're really nervous, you go to the toilet. The gut and the mind is connected. I think I do have a podcast on that actually. And the more we ignore, the more then it'll affect our mental health. So working on your mental health really will help you to interpret your inner voice as well. So looking after your mental health, cleanse your mind, heal your issues, take time off social media, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Relax, rest when you need to. And then slowly, the more you listen, the more you will receive. And over time, this will become your second nature. Just mentioning nature there. Nature is very important to help. And I know I always talk about we are nature, but Mother Nature gives life, giving the space for the seeds of creation. So Mother Nature provides the nutrients needed for life. If we completely ignore nature, and it's hard to get out in nature in this modern life, we will struggle to tap into that intuition. We need to be, imagine those earth mothers that you may look at and think, gosh, I wish I was a bit more like that. They are tapped in. We don't have to be like that. They are their own person. We all have our own way of doing it. Yours might be just going for a walk every evening. not taking your phone, not listening to anything, and just really enjoying having a look around you, tapping in. When you see a bird, smile, say hello in your mind. You don't have to say it out loud, people might think you're a bit weird, but just really enjoying being out in nature. And then when you're on those walks, you'll find that your mind starts to slowly empty and you're able to tap into your intuition a little bit more. And you can have those conversations in your mind, see how things feel, speak. What do I need to do? Where do I need to go? And see how it feels within the body. One more thing, because I'm coming to the end, what really helps, and I'm just sat here now with them all on my desk, is crystals. And I know I've mentioned crystals before, but crystals can really help you with your intuition. So we've all heard the saying, and the song, I'm not going to sing it, I was, but then I got the tune wrong. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. So therefore, it's safe to assume, I think, that on some level, we are connected to crystals. We put so much emphasis on diamonds. Why? It's because they are also a crystal. So we're connected, and crystals can help us. Crystals are full, they're high vibe, high frequency. They emit frequencies just like any other living animal or plant. Some people, I've heard in the doing my rounds, consider crystals as being alive because they have their frequency is just so high. So just like living animals, crystals have all their various kinds, their shades, their species. They all look different and they all have different properties. So when you're tapping into your intuition, I would say get some crystals, go crystal shopping. We don't need technology to help us to be intuitive. These are our technology. When they're charged and activated, they really can interact with our energy field. So it might be that you take yourself to a crystal shop and use your intuition. Sometimes I go into a crystal shop and I'll buy loads. Other days I'll go in and my intuition's just like, no, I don't pick anything. So there's different crystals, they can boost confidence, they can help anxiety. Go in and see what you're drawn to. And that's also a really good practice for your intuition. Just start with one crystal, carry that around with you. I think most people listening to this podcast have their crystals already. And you'll know how to use them. So you might be thinking, yep, I know this, I know all this, great. Make sure you're using them. I am going to do a podcast just on crystals, I think, because it is, I think I'm going to try and get a guest on who's a little bit more of an expert than me. So let's end that there. My intuition now is telling me that I've been talking too much. So we're going to stop. Homework, begin to tap in. Trust your intuition. Tell your intuition you trust it, you believe in it, you know that it works, it's there to guide you. Just sit for 5 minutes and just say, where do I need to go? What do I need to do? What is it that you need to show me? And see what comes up. See how it feels. If you make a decision and it feels like crap, then you've listened to your ego. You need it to feel good. And on that note, have a lovely day and I'll see you all next week.
And that's it today, everybody. I hope you have a lovely week and I'll see you again next week. Don't forget, 5 stars, download, tell your friends. You're amazing.